Okay, well, welcome everybody, and I'd like to welcome Castellarisians, family and friends. Justin, put your hand up. He's our president, and welcome, and fellow committee members. And we've got Philippa from Castellorizo. Tonight we have George Kailis joining us as our as our speaker, and thank you very much, George. And Freda will be interviewing him. And with that, I'm not going to give them an introduction at this point because I don't think they really need one. So what I'd like you to do is make sure that you're all muted. At the end of the session, we will have 10 minutes for question time. So Freda, I'd like to kindly hand over to you, and thank you.
Thank you, Lena, and a very warm welcome to you all on this cold, wintry Melbourne night. So thanks for tuning in, and it's great to see so many faces. I'm seeing Kazzie's here, Greek patriots, and of course, Phil. So welcome, one and all, and thanks for joining us. I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Well, tonight we explore the story of George Kailis. Now, to us all, the Kailis name is synonymous with the fishing and seafood industry. And tonight, George will touch on his prominent family's history, and we'll of course be talking all things fish and getting to know the man himself, why he and his beautiful wife Rose have made Melbourne their home, and we'll also glean into some insights of what inspires and motivates this astute businessman and benevolent philanthropist. I've had the distinct pleasure of getting to know George and Rose firsthand over these past few years, and by way of disclosure, George and I serve on the board of the Hellenic Initiative, that's THI Australia, where he chairs the THI fundraising committee. And on a personal note, I have found George to be a man who is driven by principle, by purpose, and who really has dedicated himself to using his influence to connect the Greek diaspora to much needed causes and projects in Greece that are as much transformational as they are life-changing, and we'll be touching on that later tonight. And of course, at the Castellarisian Association of Victoria, we've also gotten to know their daughter, Sophia, who has attended some of the social events that have been organised by our Vice President, Lena Coates, and now Secretary, Anastasia Kailis. So let's jump in. George, a very warm welcome and great to have you with us. Welcome.
Great, thank you. It's lovely to be with everyone. Well, I suppose I have to go back to when my grandfather first came to Australia. My grandfather, Castellarisian, came to Australia in 1914 as a 14-year-old, so he was born 1900. Came out to Australia with his uncle. His parents sent him to Australia with his uncle, and parents followed a few years later. When my grandfather arrived here, his uncle promptly sent him to Townsville with basically the shirt on his back and a few bucks in his pocket. And he cut sugarcane in Queensland, as a few other Greeks did. Pretty tough times up there, no English, 14-year-old boy. Learned pretty much quickly what it took to survive in a place where foreigners, Greeks, were not always that welcome. He eventually made his way across the top down to Perth, to Western Australia, into the southwest, not far from where Margaret River is today. He cut timber at a place called Hoffman's Mill, as I've been told when I was a kid, and eventually made his way up to Fremantle into Perth. Had a barrow down there selling fruit and other things initially, but it didn't take him long to get back to his roots of the sea and fish and seafood, and started selling seafood. So seafood very much became his life, and he established a business in 1926, which he called GP Kailis and Sons. From that fish shop in the heart of Perth, he was able to feed his family. He went on to become the first president of the Hellenic community in WA, longest serving, or one of the longest serving presidents of the Hellenic community. He was one of the people involved in the building of the church, the main cathedral. The main cathedral, of course, in Perth is St. Constantine's in Hellenaeus Constantinos και Ελένης. And that church is, of course, our main cathedral on Castellodizol. So the Kazzies were very much involved in the building of the church, the first church in Perth, the largest church, the cathedral. And my grandfather became quite involved in community affairs, as you can imagine, as being president. And in those days, I think the Greek community was particularly well united and they got a lot done. Incredible amount of foresight by the treasurer, by the committee members. They're very devoted to all things Greek and to establish themselves in Perth.
George, what about in relation to your father? You know, we know as Castellarisians that the family unit is the most important foundation of Greek society. So tell us a little bit about what it was like, you know, you growing up in those formative years and what your father was like as well after your granddad.
Well, I think my dad took after his dad a lot in the sense that he had a strong sense of community, a strong sense of his Kazzie background, his Greek background. He instilled in us a very strong work ethic, a belief in giving back. He constantly ensured that we were not taking things for granted and making sure that whatever we had, we were not feeling any sense of entitlement or anything like that, that you had to work hard to get ahead. And I think that work ethic, the sense of community, the importance of family were things, the traditions of the Greek traditions. Easter was a huge occasion in our home, and my dad and his brothers would do the big Easter rounds on Sunday, visit like 30 homes. We did all the, you know, the Ave Lemon at midnight, all the traditions associated with Easter. So they were great things and got great memories, and those things were fantastic.
And George, look, I do want to go to your marriage with Rose. I want to talk a little bit about your family. But before we go there, did your dad marry a Kazzie like you did?
Oh, no, he didn't actually. My mum's family are from Smyrna, from Asia Minor. My mum's father, my grandfather, went through Alexandria, and eventually he married his childhood sweetheart, but in all places, the Philippines. So it's very unusual, but the family the Stylianopoulos family went from Alexandria to the Philippines, and my mum was born there, as her other siblings were all born there. So she lived there till she was about 17 or 18, and so she learned fluent Spanish. Excuse me, Spanish. She spoke Tagalog, which is a Philippine language. She spoke fluent Greek because her mum taught them all Greek. My grandfather took them back to Greece to be christened. So my mum's family history is very rich and very interesting, but not a Kazzie background, but certainly very Greek. And she spoke to us as kids in Greek. And thanks to my maternal grandmother and my mum, my Greek is passable.
Fascinating. That is just such a great story. Okay, well, let's go on to let's talk about Rose. Now, were you two childhood sweethearts?
Not really, no. We went to Greek. We went to Greek school together, but I wouldn't say we were childhood sweethearts.
Okay.
We knew each other. Rose's family were involved at very similar timing to my own grandfather's. Started a bakaliko in about 1929, and if I'm not mistaken, her grandfather was the first importer of a barrel of olive oil into Perth. So Kailis Brothers, it was called, the business in those days. It's still going today in William Street, and Rose's sister Eleni has a Kailis sister down in Fremantle and in where is it? Somewhere else. I can't think for a moment. Another suburb of Perth. But certainly the family, very similar Greek family. They're very particularly close to the church. My father-in-law was a psalti in the church, but got to know Rose after Greek school when we went to uni, and we caught up then, and one thing led to another, and we're still very happily married today.
Great story. And how many children? We
Two.
all two.
Two
So
kids.
two. Okay.
Irakli and Sophia.
Okay.
Yeah, they're my two kids, yeah.
And so, okay, so George, let's get on to maybe some of your business interests. And that was fascinating, by the way. There's such a rich tapestry there of history in your family. But look, let's get on to some of your business interests. You joined the family business in the late 1970s. You set about expanding the operations. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts and the importance of diversification in that period when you were working for KB Foods.
Thank you. Yeah, well, Freda, I have to say my father took over from his father in the 50s, and after he married my mother and I'm one of 5 children, we eventually, the 4 boys in the family all ended up in the business. My sister periodically was there, but not really involved in the business itself. But my 3 brothers and myself got involved as we finished uni or school. And I guess the business, when my father took it over, was pretty much involved in the auctioneering of fresh fish. So very passionate about fresh fish. Spent a lot of time going to fishermen's meetings with my dad in remote country towns in Western Australia along the coast. Learnt the importance of dealing with primary producers. Like farmers, fishermen are a unique breed. Learnt the importance of speaking to them at a level, that doesn't mean a low level, but at a level that they can relate to. And I think that was one of the best things I ever learned, how to, in talking to older people and people from different backgrounds, trying to get your message across in a manner that they understand. So my dad was a master at that, and he had tremendous relationships with the fishermen and their wives and their kids and everything. So I was lucky to inherit a great relationship and goodwill that my dad established then. In terms of diversification, the business started off auctioning fish, went into wholesaling. Wholesaling led us to exporting. And so we had that natural hedge against different things. So if the fresh fish business in those days, believe it or not, unlike today where fresh fish is in such demand, we couldn't sell all our fresh fish. So we had to find another outlet. So that's where we started processing, exporting, selling into restaurants, whoever would buy it. That was important. And then since then, I made the move to Melbourne. So I can talk to you about that when you're ready.
Yeah, actually, I wouldn't mind. You coming to Melbourne, why would you come to Melbourne leaving your family? All your family based in Perth. The operations were in Perth. So why Melbourne?
To be honest with you, an opportunity presented itself in Melbourne around 1991. And it was just an opportunity to come here and establish something. We were already sending a lot of fresh fish from Perth across to the markets in Footscray. So I'd been coming over and meeting people at the fish markets, the Miriklis family, your namesake in the fish markets, the Rakavolises, the McLaughlins, the various, providors in the market there. So we were sending fresh fish over from there. So I kind of knew a little bit about Melbourne. I had great friends from New Gas. So I naturally aligned myself to Melbourne more than any other city. I also don't mind AFL football, so I kind of thought that might be nice. If I'm going to do this and drag my family across Australia, I've got to go somewhere where I feel really comfortable. And despite the fact that I love all the other cities in Australia, I felt a great cultural and Greek connection to Melbourne, and the business just happened to slot in perfectly as well.
Good on you, George. Wonderful.
Very lucky. Very lucky.
Yeah. So George, just tell us, in relation to the business, how big was the seafood company, KB Foods?
Well, it grew quite a bit. We managed to open up offices overseas in Thailand and in Vietnam, and we had a tremendous relationship with a company called Sealord in New Zealand. So the company grew to about, I can just sort of say, probably earnings of about $650 million when we sold it. and that was, yeah, it was about that big, employed about 400 people, most of them in Western Australia. There were only about 50 or 60 on the East Coast, which I was managing, but we had people overseas, and I was responsible for some of those things as well.
And then those business interests were sold in 2016, is that right?
That's right. We got to a point where we had to make some decisions, and it was difficult to get consensus on what that should be. Everybody, big family, different ideas. So there's just good timing. When I say good timing, we had interest from a few people. We looked at different options, and then a company by the name of Legend Holdings approached us. They did due diligence, as they normally do in these things.
And they're the computer company, aren't they? Lenovo.
Lenovo.
Legend is behind Lenovo.
Yeah, Lenovo. Yeah.
Lenovo. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, they are. They own Motorola's. They own Motorola in China, and they have something to do with IBM's PC business. So yes, it's completely different. They started doing some business in frozen fruits, as I recall, and then they decided that seafood and lobster and things like that were of interest as China was coming out of and growing.
And there you go, George, diversification again.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a bit of fun.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can really go on in relation to the business interests. I know that you have been there was a non-complete clause for 3 years. You've been under since selling those family interests to Legend Holdings. So, what have you been doing for these last few years?
Well, as you say, Freda, I've had this non-compete clause which finishes in September on the 19th. I don't know the exact time of the day it finishes, but I'm looking forward to that time. It's been a difficult period because I was pretty full on into the business, traveling almost every week or every second week, and then all of a sudden stopped. And yes, we had COVID in between. I've done a little bit of mentoring with some people who've had other businesses and wanted some advice and things. So I've been trying to do things to keep my brain stimulated. A couple of little property things, nothing earth-shattering compared to what I was doing before, but I'm still interested in getting back into a role in the industry in the next few months or thereafter.
Oh, so possibly we might see you in the seafood industry yet. So we've got to watch this space.
Hopefully in a different iteration to what I had before, Freda, but some involvement. It's in my blood. It's something that I'm passionate about, and if I can do something good that makes a difference, I'll be really happy.
That's great. George, I'd like to now go into Gastilorizzo, and it's great to see that we have a KAV committee member, Philippa Agimus, who's currently there in Gastilorizzo on the island, so we might be able to speak to Philippa a little bit later on. But I know that you've been going to Gastilorizzo now for quite a few years, some 30 years in fact. I just want to know a little bit about what do you do there? How long do you go for when you do go to Gastilorizzo? And can you just walk us through a typical day for you on the island?
Obviously, when my kids were at school, time was a little bit more limited. So we started going there when my kids were in primary school, and so they're 30 odd years of age now. And so we were going right through those, and it was a typical, take the 3 week break in the middle of the year, try and sneak an extra week in, 4 weeks. And pretty much once they got to Gastilorizzo, they didn't want to go anywhere else. That was the problem. It wasn't a problem, but we didn't venture far away. We did the odd trip to Crete or to Ithaca or something like that we did, which were fabulous trips. But generally speaking, we were entrenched in staying in Gastilorizzo for that period of time. So I did that for years on years. Rose's great-grandmother had a home which was in shocking condition, water coming through the roof and God knows what else. So about 15 or so years ago, we decided to fix it. So we fixed the home. And today it's sitting there waiting for us to come back one day and grace it with our presence, because it's a beautiful little old home. It's very original staircase. It hasn't been modernised very much. but we like it the way it is, and it's terrific. Yeah.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds wonderful. So, George, tell us, are you likely to be going to Castellorizo this year?
I am. I'm planning to go we're planning to go at the end of August. In terms of what I do there, Freda, I got to say that one of the things that people miss out on are the walks, I should say, the walks of Castellorizo. There are some beautiful walks that you can do, and we do them every day, sometimes twice a day. Usually we do a walk in the morning down towards the power station through Mandraki, and then in the afternoons we'll go up the mountain across to Aio Stefano, over to Nablacas Bay, up to Palio Castro, St. George of the Mountain, St. John. All those different sites. There's a great book by Norman Ashton, who was the professor or archaeologist who pointed out a number of the sites on the island. So you can find wine vats, or wine presses, I should say,
Wow.
tombs and other things. And so you can use that book if you want, just to make it a bit more interesting. But there's figs and other things to enjoy along the way too.
And fish, George.
Plenty of fish, not on the walks, but there's plenty of nice figs on the trees during July, August. And finding those is always a treat.
Fantastic. So we know that you enjoy recreational fishing, right? So you're a fisherman through and through. But tell us a little bit more about some of your other interests outside of fish and fishing.
Well, I have been interested, as you know, you mentioned about THI. I have to say, I've been interested in medical research. I mentioned to you that my wife's family maiden name is Kailis. In the 80s, Professor Byron Kailis, who's a eminent person worldwide, who's done studies on muscular dystrophy, is regarded as one of the greatest authorities on that, approached us to raise money for research into muscular dystrophy. And I remember in the early 80s, we started a 1 day a year auction of products in the fish markets. And it's still going today, and it's raised, I don't know, about $1.5 million. So seeing what medical research, or what money could do for medical research, especially into kids' illnesses and things, was something that I felt was really worthwhile. And so I've always been interested in supporting that kind of charity, that kind of, non-for-profit, or sorry, I should say medical research in general, but certainly things to do with kids.
Yes.
It resonates with people. It makes a huge difference. So I have been a little bit involved with that, and THI, through PED trauma and other things, has enabled us to do more things in that area. What else?
Given that you are talking about THI, that might be a perfect segue, because we really do want to cover a little bit about the Hellenic Initiative Australia. So, look, what is THI Australia, and how did it start, George? For those of our listeners who may not be aware of THI.
Sure. Well, THI was started by Kazzie of the Year, Andrew Liveris, who was involved in the Clinton initiative, was approached by a group of Greeks in America, and asked if he would do anything, if he could do something to help Greece in its time of need. And Andrew, with the patronage from Bill Clinton, President Clinton, formed a body called the Hellenic Initiative. I think it's 12 years old now, roughly, Freda. Would I be right there?
I think we're coming up to the 10th anniversary for the USA. Yeah,
10th
right.
anniversary, I should say, yeah.
Yes.
I knew he was 10 or 12 years old. Anyway, Andrew was the founding person, along with another chap from America, and it's grown into an organisation now that is in Canada, in the UK, and of course in Australia. So my involvement is in THI Australia. It's a non-for-profit organisation that galvanises the diaspora. So much the same as the Jews do for Israel, much the same as the Irish have done for Ireland when Ireland's been going through its economic demise.
Yeah.
This is about getting Greeks from outside of Greece to find ways to contribute to helping Greece recover. That's the whole point of it. We've faced the normal challenges of wondering whether whatever we do will get to whatever monies we've raised or whatever programs we have. Are they going to have the impact? Are the funds going to get to where they're supposed to get to? And I'm pleased to, and I can answer any questions in that regard you may have. But
so then, George, it begs the question: how is THI as a global body viewed inside of Greece or in Greece?
Yeah, it's viewed very positively. Prime Minister Mitsotakis is very much aware of who THI Australia is. He welcomes our president, Nick Pappas, who goes there regularly. He's even got a very strong connection to Castellorizo. His wife, Kyriakos Mitsotakis' wife, Mariva, has Singenia with Saint-Tropez Luca, the church, and the school. Kazzie is, of course, named after that family, and she is related there on one side of her family. So she's been to the island several times. He also has been there many times. And so he's actually asked Nick Pappas if, what would be the 4 or 5 things that we could do, Greece or Athens could do for Castellorizo. So I believe that THI, not just for Castellorizo, but for Greece in general, is viewed very, very, very warmly and very seriously and taken. And certainly we can open doors when we need to if people want to do business there, whatever. THI is in a unique position to help.
Yeah. So, George, I'm just wondering, as the chair of the fundraising committee for THI Australia, could you tell us a little bit about how much money has been raised so far? I know that, for those that may not be aware, THI Australia was actually founded in 2015. So in that time from 2015 to now, what does the scorecard look like?
Look, the scorecard's good. We've raised $1.5 million. I've just got a few figures I got off my latest report.
Right.
But we've raised about $1.5 million in grants to about 11 trusted charities, delivering programs across health, social services, education, and employment. A further $800,000 in kind support has enabled Greek graduates to participate in our internship program, where we bought, pre-COVID, of course, where we could fly freely, and we bought interns from Greece, young graduates, got them jobs in high-profile businesses in Australia, got them experience, sent them back to Greece with skills. All of those kids who came out here, or young men and women who came out here, have found jobs back in Greece. At that time, there was a huge brain drain on Greece, as you may be aware. A lot of families were having to send their young kids off to Germany and other parts of Europe where there were more employment opportunities. That's changing, and the internship program, even though it's only, it's not thousands of interns, but it did have a very positive effect and sent the right message.
That's great, George. And collectively, what sort of money has THI globally raised?
Look, my understanding is that there's a figure of $6 million in crisis relief, right, and about 15 million, 16 million Australian, maybe 10 or 11 million US in economic and entrepreneurial development. So it's pretty significant. We could do better, but I'm pretty proud and happy with what we've done today.
That's great, George. I just think that, you mentioned that THI is supporting around 11 charities, NGOs on the ground. I'd like to now turn our attention. I know that you have so much and you're very, very passionate about the medical NGO that we work with on the ground there. But I wonder, I'd like to focus now on the tipping point, which is one of the new programs that THI Australia has been engaged with. I just wonder if you could just talk a little bit about TPP, or TTP, I should say, and what the program does.
Yes, of course. Well, Tipping Point has gone from supporting, initially three schools to 395 schools. So basically, it's an organisation that provides mentorship for students in the equivalent of year 11 and 12. We all know in Australia, students who are in 11 and 12, they're critical years where you're making decisions on subjects and you're making decisions on career. And in remote parts of Greece, as we've seen with medical instances where, if you're in Athens, your access to reasonable medical attention is far greater than it is in remote islands. It's not much different from an education and schooling point of view. They miss out on quite a bit, especially in small remote Greek islands. The larger ones, not so much. The creeks and the roads, not so bad, but islands like Kastellorizo and other small islands miss out a lot. So what this is, a group of young men, highly educated young men, got together and decided to run an internship program where they'd bring, through online, they would bring themselves into the classroom, into the kids' classroom, and be able to discuss one-on-one with kids what they would like to do, guide them, direct them, offer to have offline discussions with them, and really get close to them. And the CAV have been incredible because the Kastellorizo Association of Victoria has embraced Tipping Point, has provided. It's only, I think the funding structure is very interesting because they don't charge by the number of students. So whether you've got 50 kids in a school, which is probably roughly what's in the school in Kastellorizo today, or whether you've got 250 or 450 kids of that sort of age that I'm talking about, 15, 16, 17 years of age, they charge something like $2,700 to run a mentoring program. So the CAV have committed to 3 years, so nearly $8,000, just under $8,000 to run that course, and it is going to have a very positive effect. THI has done about 14 schools. I don't remember all of them, but off the top of my head, Chios, Crete, Kefalonia, Kos, some parts of the Peloponneso, northern Greece. They're the islands that come to mind.
And George, you raise a really interesting point around all of us. I think even as grandparents or parents, we know just what sort of stress our children go through during those critical years, as you put it, the year 11 and year 12. And I think that we actually have some video from one of the first reports that has come into the KAV, where we've got Betty Muzak, who is the principal and the biology teacher, I understand, at the Santa Rafea school in Kastellorizo. And we've just got a quick bite here where she explains the problems that are faced by the students on the island. And she's speaking in Greek in this clip, but there are English subtitles, so I'll just give everybody a heads up. So we might just cut across to that video now and hear from Miss Betty Joan Bouzakis. Thank you.
Δεν έχουμε και παραστάσεις για πάρα πολλά και ένα από τα, εδώ στο νησί κυρίως ασχολούνται οι γονείς με τον τουρισμό και την αλεία και οι μαθητές και οι μαθήτριές μας, στην πλειοψηφία τους και αυτοί προσανατολίζονται προς αυτή την κατεύθυνση. Ακόμα μαθητές και μαθήτριες που έχουν σπουδάσει επιστρέφουν πίσω και προσπαθούν να βρουν μια δουλειά στο νησί. Ένα από τα άσχημα πράγματα εδώ στο νησί είναι ότι δεν έχουμε καθηγητές όλων των ειδικοτήτων. Και αυτό έχει σαν συνέπεια παιδιά που έχουν κάποια ταλέντα να μην μπορούν να τα εκμεταλλευτούν και να ασχοληθούν στην επαγγελματική τους αποκατάσταση με αυτό το προσανατολισμό και με αυτό το ιδιαίτερο ταλέντο που έχουν. Δηλαδή, αρχιτεκτονική που μπορεί να ήθελε ένα παιδί που είχαμε φέτος και ήθελε να σπουδάσει. Δεν έχουμε καθηγητή αισθητικής αγωγής, γιατί δεν συμπληρώνει ωράριο. Μπορούσε βέβαια, αν το ήξερε, με κατάλληλο επαγγελματικό προσανατολισμό, να δει ότι υπάρχουν και άλλα πεδία επαγγελματικά που του ανοίγονται, όπου μπορεί να αξιοποιήσει αυτά τα ταλέντα και να βάζει και το προστοζήν. Αυτά είναι από τα προβλήματα που αντιμετωπίζουν οι μαθητές μου και μαθήτριες. Εδώ.
Yeah, you know, some great points there around, you know, lack of teachers, lack of mentors, a real problem for the students that really can make a huge impact for their future and for the future of the island. But listening to that clip, George, you might have your future made out for you here. Professor of Fishery, I reckon. We might be able to get you to do some mentoring on the island.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's enough fish there to warrant my involvement. I think they've bombed or fished it all out there. But
okay, well, let's get back to the tipping point. So you were saying, George, that it's a national program in Greece. Can you take us through how many children have actually benefited from the program?
I sure can. So it's gone from supporting 3 schools, 395. That's about 37,000 students. And have been involved. The 14 schools, so in total, say 37,000 students is my understanding, Freda.
Right. Okay.
About that number.
Yep. So this is the program that started with the young professionals, had 3 schools when they started this NGO in 2016, and they are now in 395 schools.
That is correct. That is correct.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And that's around 37,000 students that have benefited. And you were saying almost, was it 2,000 mentors?
About 2,000 mentors who've been involved. They connect online for live sessions by video. They're paired with individual students.
Right.
And they probe the kids to find what their interests are.
Yep.
So they can target, you know, and their advice to fit in with what those needs are.
Yeah. And so I understand that from THI's perspective, George, we started that program with 3 schools in 2019, and then that's now increased, you were saying, to 14 schools. Well, I think it was 11 schools in 2020, was it? And
I think it was.
14.
I think it's about 14 schools today.
Now in 2022.
About 800 students, 148 live sessions, 123 mentors.
Right. That's great. And so
that just gives you an idea of.
Yeah, great. Some really big numbers, impressive numbers there. George, can you tell us how it works? How does the program actually work? You were mentioning.
Well, it works in 3 ways. First, they ask the kids to pick an area of interest. Second, according to what their interest is, they are paired with the appropriate mentor. So they have mentors who obviously have skills in different areas, and they choose the mentor that is going to work best for that particular need. So they work with them, they do it online and person to person. And I can tell you now, Betty, the lady who you just had, who's the principal of the school, the biology teacher, she is incredibly good. Given the Greece, she's married to a Kazzie, and what she's doing on the island under those circumstances, incredible. And the same applies in all the other schools where we've seen. They've all got the welcoming of Tipping Point and the influence it's having on the schools is incredible.
Yeah, that's great, George. I just wonder, can you give us a little bit of an insight in terms of THI Australia? Like, how much money have, you know, as chair of the fundraising committee, how much money has THI Australia raised for the program?
I think about $40,000, if I'm not mistaken. About 40,000 has been allocated. As you can imagine, we're stretched across a number of different charities, and we do due diligence on all these charities. Let me just make this point, because a lot of people, you hear all sorts of feedback as you're going to talk to people about contributing to causes in Greece, you know, and the most common thing I've heard is, will the money get to where it's supposed to go? And I can say that due to the due diligence that THI does and the people we have on the ground, we are very confident that the monies that we raise goes directly to the support that it's needed to, intended to do.
So then, George, who can donate to THI causes?
Well, anybody can donate, and we've had different appeals. So you'll remember a year or two ago, Freda, we had the winter appeal where we were trying to raise $50 for a sleeping bag. So it was a sleeping bag, a ground sheet, and we bought hundreds of sleeping bags, almost maybe 1,000 or so sleeping bags we bought for homeless people. And people felt very connected to that because they were giving amount of money to buy a specific thing, not just $50. Where's it going to go? It's going to buy a sleeping bag. And we've been able to do that with a number of other of our charities, where we're buying specific things for specific causes. So you can donate as little as whatever you like, or you can get involved and contact me or contact our office in the head office and speak to Stevitsa, and you'll find a cause or something that will, you know, resonate with you.
So, George, if people are thinking about gifting, why should they choose THI Australia over any other charity?
Good question, Freda. Firstly, we have charitable status and tax deductibility. To get that, you have to go through a lot of hoops, as you know, and we have achieved that. So tax deductible status is done, good reason to give money to THI, but really tax deductible means nothing if the money's not doing any good. We have great evidence that our fundraising is changing lives. And I can give you numerous examples. I've already mentioned that I'm quite interested in children's medical research. One of the areas outside of Tipping Point, away from Tipping Point in education, is ped trauma. So ped trauma is a group who set up trauma units for young children in remote parts of Greece where they don't have a trauma unit. And you can buy an incubator, you can buy a blanket, you can buy a whole lot of different things, anything from $50 to $10,000, $100,000, depending on how big a facility they build. But this has proven to be a very worthwhile endeavour for THI. So you can, if you're interested in the same sort of things as I am in medical research or medical children's health, you can get involved in donating that way. Or there are other causes, as you know, we do Burume, we do Desmos, we'd have Ithaca Laundry. We have, if you get on our website, there are numerous, well, not numerous, but there are about 14 bodies that we support.
And George, you know how we're on Kazzie Connect here tonight, which is the way that we keep the Castellarician community together at the KAV. THI also does something very similar with its digital conversation series, which are a series of live webinars that we hold. What sort of presenters have we had in the past that have featured on the digital conversation series?
Yes, well, Freda, we've had some incredible connections. First, we've had the Greek Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis. He graced us with his presence, and we had a fantastic discussion with him. We had Dr. Albert Bourla, who is the CEO of Pfizer, and he talked us through how they came up with the vaccine for the pandemic, for the COVID pandemic. So we had him. We had Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry, one of the most foremost entertainers and raconteurs in the UK. Huge Philhellene, has written several books on Greece. Knows more about the Parthenon and the Parthenon marbles and every other bit of Greek history than you can imagine. And we couldn't get him off the webinar. He was just so enthralled with it all. And thanks to our CEO, Steve Gitzer, her husband, who interviewed him, David Hill, a huge Philhellene, we were able to hold those. And we've got a beautiful webinar coming up tomorrow night, I believe, with the Greek foreign minister.
Yes, Mr. Nikos Dandias, that's right.
Dandias, that's him. And so we have him, which anybody can join. You can get online and enroll for that webinar, and we'll hear what's happening in Greece. Right. Because knowing what's going on in Greece, I've said this to you many times: a strong Greece is good for Europe. It's good for Castellorizo. Castellorizo, as we know, I'm speaking to Kazzies who are listening tonight, but as we all know, there's a lot of disputes over gas and oil and other things in our region. And we're relying very heavily on the support of the military and Greece's allies, especially the French, who have been very close with this current government. And yes, so certainly worth listening to the foreign minister.
Yep,
to hear
that's
what
great. And that's, of course, the digital conversation series live webinar, and that'll be held tomorrow, the 7th of July, from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. We can provide those details to the KAV if you'd like to find out more about that. So thanks for that, George. And George, we're running out of time. Oh, so let's let's leave it with any last thoughts that you might have. Anything that you want to leave us with?
Oh, look, I would just say that whatever your interest in Greece, when you go to if you do go to Castellorizo, allow enough time to do the other things other than just to go to the Blue Grotto, to explore the island. You find a new fascination with Kazzie. Aside from that, my interests, as you know, are with THI and seeing what we can do to help Greece. As I said, a strong Greece is good for Europe. It's good for Kazzie. It's good for everyone. I don't think people should be off-put by donating through THI. We know also, for example, not through THI, but Macquarie Bank has just made a huge investment in Greece. Greece is coming out of its demise, but it's slow, and there are a lot of the poorer people who are being left behind. But the country is improving its tax system, improving the way it interacts with the rest of Europe. It's highly respected compared to previously, and I think Greece will turn it around. But the diaspora can make a big difference, and THI is a great vehicle to use to make a difference, as big or as small as your donation wants to be.
And, as you were just saying there, George, we're seeing a lot of investment, not only with Macquarie and the energy interests that they've now made an investment in, owning half of the energy interests in Greece, but we've also seen with Pfizer having one of their head office research areas in Thessaloniki. So increasingly, we're starting to see a lot more. Microsoft was another one that comes to mind. So a lot more interest is now certainly taking effect in Greece, which is great to see. George, we could keep on going for much longer. I think we've definitely got to bring you back for another Kazzie Connects, but I want to thank you, George, so very much for, it was a riveting and inspiring hour that's gone by so very quickly. As we know, the KAV upholds the Castellorisian ethos of faith, hope, charity. And I think tonight you have masterfully woven those ideas throughout and shown us the impact that they can have in the lives of others. So on behalf of our President, Justin Masters, the KAV committee, our members, our lovely guests that are here with us tonight, I'd like to sincerely thank you, George, for being with us, for your service to Greece and for the impact that your work with THI Australia continues to have on so many lives. It certainly has been a great pleasure and a great honour to have you with us here tonight. So thank you. And to everybody else, on a final note, please do visit our KAV website for more information on the tipping point or THI Australia. And even if you want to read a little bit more about the KAV's commitment to the mentoring program through THI Australia and the tipping point that we've just been talking about. Simply, all you have to do is click under the Our Charity section of our website and then go to the Changing the Life of One Child project. The full version of that video that we played earlier from the principal at Saint-Tropez School in Castellorizo will also be there. And please do send any of your thoughts, any comments, any feedback that you may have. We'd love for you to be very much a part of the mentoring program. So thanks again for joining us. And with that, I now pass back to Lena. Thank you, Lena.
Thank you, Freda, very much. Well, that was absolutely very, very entertaining, interesting. And George, you've had certainly a rich family history, a wonderful professional life, and it sounds like it's not finished yet. And certainly the work you're doing with THI, it sounds absolutely wonderful, and we wish you all the best, and certainly it'll go from strength to strength. Freda, you're always the consummate professional. We are so lucky to have you. I know you've put a lot of time into this. So on behalf of the KAV and the committee and our president, thanks so much for the time you've put into this. We really, really thank you. So on that note, what I'd like to do now is really open it up. And George, if you'd be kind enough to stay with us another 10 minutes or so, I'll open it up to our community here to ask a few questions. Take yourselves off mute.
George, I have a question. My name is Nick Kirk. I'm from Brisbane. My parents were born in Castellorizo. I spent the last 28 years commuting backwards and forwards to the Philippines where I work. And I was very interested to hear of your family history there and the years that they've spent there. And in fact, some of your family members were born there. So I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Yeah, look, as I said, my mother was born in Legazpi, and she lived in Naga. They're the two places I know she lived. She had family in Manila. Her father and mother went there in their 30s, had 5 children. She was there when the Philippines were liberated by the Americans from the Japanese. Incredible stories from my mother in those days. I could tell you some incredible stories about
I'd like to hear those one day over a glass of wine. That'd be beautiful.
Well, feel free to contact me. I'd be delighted to do it either in person or online. We can have a glass of wine and talk to each other on the computer.
In fact, my wife told me today, my wife is Cypriot. She told me today that her Aunt Catherine, who's since deceased, she was from Perth. My wife was born in Perth. Their surname was Papadopoulos, and she married, she was a Kailis, and she married her uncle Homer Papadopoulos in Perth, and then came to Brisbane. So there is a family connection there.
Amazing. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, fantastic. Well, the Kazzie's went everywhere.
The other thing is there good internet on the island, on Castellorizo? I mean, could you provide online learning to Castellorizo? Excellent
internet. There are cafes, school, everywhere, restaurants. They all have tremendous internet, Wi-Fi, whatever you need. Yep.
Do they have, would they be interested in business programs?
If you've got something to put forward, I'm sure they'd be interested.
Yes, I have an online education business, specifically in business programs that are very relevant to what you were talking about. So
Sure.
it might be something we might explore, offering some scholarships or something.
That'd be fantastic. Well, please contact me offline and let's talk about it. I'm sure we can find a way of connecting.
Lovely.
Thank you.
I'll send Freda my website and she can have a look at that.
And Nick, I was just going to say, lovely to see you, Nick.
Yeah, lovely, Freda.
I was just going to say also, you're going to have a lot to talk to, George, even your daughter, Diana, and her work with the Mount Sinai Hospital. Doesn't get better than that.
Yes.
So there'll be you'll have a lot of connections. And Lena, I was just going to say, in answer of Nick's question about internet on the island, we should actually ask Philippa, who currently is connecting to us live from Gastelorizzo.
Philippa.
But no, it's been perfect. And I was also might be able to act as a mentor to some of the children and to anyone that's aspiring to go into medicine. That would be an awesome way of her to contribute to the Castellation cause. The other thing that concerned me that George spoke about is young blokes that go into classrooms and speak. It seems like there's a marked absence of females that can be strong role models, because we know that it's harder for a female generally to be mentored and to make a difference in the world without some sort of support. And we know that the only ways children can break that cycle is through education and consistent and strong relationships. So I think the mentorships are really something we need to support going forward. So that's off the topic of the internet, but I think there are lots of ways we can do it. Yes, internet connection, keeping children connected with their mentors would be awesome.
Thanks, Philippa. George, I've actually got a question for you. It's Lena. Now, a lot of us may be retired, some might be still working, etc. However, there's always that fine line between your working life and your personal life. And obviously it was very busy when you were working. How did you maintain that balance?
You mean while I was working?
Yeah.
I think if you ask my wife, I didn't have any balance. She would say that I was completely out of balance. And with hindsight, I'd have to agree with her. Look, I don't think I think the one thing you do when you work long hours and you travel a lot, when you do get your holidays and you've got time to spend with your kids, you make the most of them. So I tried to make my holidays with my kids as special as possible. Sophia, actually, my daughter used to go to, she went to when we'd go to Kazzie, she studied Greek up to VCE level and then ended up teaching on Saturday mornings at a Greek school. But during the years that we'd go to Kazzie, Betty would tutor her in conversational Greek over and above whatever she knew already. And so the balance I got out of was seeing the joy that my kids and that got out of traveling overseas and things like that. But I was, like most people, when you're traveling and you've got a business, you're never really far away from the business. So I was getting up and doing, with the different hours, time zones and what have you, combining the best of both. So not great balance, Lena, but did my best. So
with your non-compete clause and going into, I'll say, semi-retirement or forced retirement, did you plan for that, or did it just stop? Because a lot of people, when they stop working, don't actually plan for it. It can be a bit of a problem. So what happened with yourself? I'd be very interested to know. Look, I have to say it's quite a confronting thing, and definitely unprepared for it. Did manage in 2019, on the 19th of March, when I stopped working in the business. I had a trip planned to go to Greece. I extended the time I was away. I took a few months away from Australia. It did give me a chance to reset and rethink. And then I just found other things to keep myself busy. I'm not a very patient person. I'm not a person who can sit idle for too long. I found things to amuse myself, but nothing really that has taken me to the degree I'd like to be working
or doing things. So I'm going to do something that'll keep me off the streets and away from home. I think my wife's had enough of me here at home.
Thank you for answering those questions. Anybody else got something to ask George?
Have you been to the Philippines, George?
I have. I've been to the Philippines. I was doing business with the US Navy, and I was going up to Clark Air Force Base and to Subic Bay in those days. So yes, I have been to the Philippines. I do like the Philippines very much. Interesting part of the world. Yes.
George, please go ahead.
No,
No, George Virginis wants to ask you a question.
Oh, please.
Sorry, George.
There's two of us. There's probably more than that. George, I was inspired by what I heard tonight. I look forward to meeting you one day. I really do. I've got a lot of questions. I've written a lot down. I'm not going to occupy the time now. I just wanted to say I was greatly impressed with your presentation, and you're a person I'd like to meet. I really would. I look forward to that day. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I too look forward to meeting you. I've heard about your involvement in CAV, and I look forward to meeting you soon.
Okay, Michael Giacomos, you'd like to ask a question?
Yes, hi George. Just wondering, where do you do your recreational fishing? What do you fish for? And do you still go and watch the Blues play?
Can you see the cup?
Oh yes.
He's a blue too.
I met up with George one day at the Carltonians with my cousin. Many years ago.
That's right. Yes, we did. Recreational fishing. I've got a mate whose dad goes down to Lorne, and we go out in his tin and catch a few snapper or King George whiting if we're lucky enough. Wow. Down there. In WA, I go across to Rottnest. Got some good spots over there. I enjoy fishing. If I'm lucky enough, I go up to the Abrolhos Islands near Geraldton, where they've got beautiful fishing grounds up there. So they're the main areas. I don't go as often as I'd like.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we've really gone a little bit over time, which was actually good, but I think now that we can say farewell again. George, thank you very much. Freda, again, thank you very much. And certainly to everybody who logged on tonight and rocked up to our session. I'm sure you found it interesting, entertaining, and knowledgeable as well. So thank you all for joining. And I'm going to bid you farewell on behalf of the Castellarisian Club family and friends. So for me, it's goodbye. But if you'd like to stay on and have a chat, you can unmute yourselves, because that's what this Kazzie Connect is all about. It's talking to others and connecting. So thank you very much on behalf of the Castellarisian Association. And next month, we have another interesting speaker lined up, which will be announced in the next couple of weeks. So thank you again all very much, and I'm going to bid you farewell. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.